Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. My name is Queen, a student from the Faculty of Business. Welcome to You Alive. Today's event is organized by the NUS Office of Alumni Relations. The program today is in 3 sections: a 10-minute talk by our speaker, Ms Tin Pei Ling, a 20-minute interview with Viswa Sadasivan, Chairman of the You Alive Organizing Committee, and then a 30-minute Q&A session. If you wish to ask a question, please make your way to the microphones placed along the aisles, introduce yourself, and speak directly into them. This is essential so the online community is able to hear your question. Today, we will also be using Pigeonhole Live for our Q&A sessions. If you have a smartphone, tablet, or a laptop computer with you, just launch your internet browser and go to pigeonhole.at. Key in our event passcode, which is UALIVE. I repeat, it is UALIVE. Click Go, and you're free to fire away all your burning questions while also voting for any questions that interest you. The more popular questions with more votes will stand a higher chance to be answered by the speakers. Thank you for your kind attention, and please sit back and enjoy.
You Alive.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ms Tin Pei Ling.
Well, my dearest friends, all from NUS, I think somehow, whether it's a student or an alumni or faculty member, very good evening to all. It's really great to be back at NUS, my alma mater. As you've seen on the slide above, I graduated in 2007. But actually I finished in the December of 2006. So I think you would have had a guess of inkling of how old I am now. But anyway, it's really a great pleasure for me to be back here, and thank you for making time to come and hear me and speak with me later. So I was told before today that this will be a brief 10-minute sharing that I will make, and that I should try to share some personal anecdotes, some stories perhaps, and try not to make it too formal, which sometimes people think that I'm a little bit too formal. So please bear with me. But in any case, today's theme is about failing forward. And the point about this is that life can never be without problems or even failures. But how we respond to adversities and challenges is really the key thing that we should think about. And in relation to that, especially in my context, is how can a young person, a youth, take on greater responsibilities, whether it's in politics, social, or even economically. So I think I will try to cover some of these points in my very brief 10-minute sharing, but I suppose later on at the Q&A, I'll be happy to address whatever questions that you may have. Then we'll take it from there. So I think for the 10-minute sharing session, I want to talk about how some of the expectations that people may have of a member of parliament as well. So maybe just let me start off by saying that when I was a student in NUS, I took on various leadership roles, whether it's a student leadership role or a community leadership role, and I was also an active volunteer in the community. And back then, amongst my peers, when we plan and execute large-scale projects, because we are among peers, we never really felt out of place. I never really quite felt out of place. And we never felt that we could not contribute to the larger community or towards a cause. to each other, we always tell each other that, if there's an opportunity or a challenge that arises, we'll say, go for it. And even those who are much older than us will also encourage us by saying, go for it. But of course, when in 2011, when I was asked to stand in the general election, and I did, I went through quite a roller coaster ride. I think, cutting the long story short, in essence, one of the key things that arose was whether a young woman in her 20s was appropriate enough or was capable enough to stand as a member of parliament as a candidate in the general election. And I remember that some of the things that people ask was, or people say was that, you are too PAP, or that you are too unlike a typical PAP candidate, or some of them will say that you're too young. Even to this day, when I'm well in my 30s, people still think that I'm in my 20s just looking at my face. So, and of course, there were some others who said that you're too unyouthful. So just 2 weeks ago on the 938 Talkback, someone called in and said that, I think you don't sound youthful enough, a bit too mature for someone who's the youngest MP in Parliament. And of course, there were some who felt that, I wasn't banging the table enough, or not seen to be banging the table enough. And there were others who felt that, I should really focus more of my energy and my time in solving the real issues on the ground for my voters or the people I represent. So I think, in essence, from all of this, one thing that came to me, or came to my mind, was that I think there were a lot of expectations of what an MP should do, how an MP should be, and to some extent, perhaps even stereotypes of how a young person ought to be. So with that in mind, perhaps let me share some of my personal experience, and actually there are 2 points that I want to make. So maybe let me share, first of all, share a little personal experience that I had when I was a student still with NUS. So when I was in NUS, I was already starting to be very active in the community. I was in grassroots. I volunteered at MPS, the Meet the People session, and as I got involved more in the community work, I also attended a lot of dialogues. And to me, it was very exciting to be involved in these dialogues because I get to learn from the people who are there and hear their perspectives. And I recall that at almost all the dialogues that I attended, the very cannot sit still kind of in me, that quality in me, just makes me want to always ask questions. So I remember that at almost every dialogue I would have something that I wanted to ask. But then there was this particular dialogue that I can still remember quite vividly, and it's something that I think was quite, I won't say life-changing, but it really changed my perspective on things. And by then I was already involved in the community, as I mentioned. So there's this particular youth dialogue with Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan. Back then he was the Minister for Youth. And during that dialogue, the youth were taking turns to ask very pointed, sharp questions, very thoughtful questions as well. And the whole sparring to and fro was really exciting. One of the points that keep coming up was on this concept of freedom of speech. And the fervor that I observed was really fantastic. But then suddenly, as I was sitting through the dialogue, something struck me, something dawned upon me. There we were, seated in an air-conditioned room, everyone, sitting down, having a very exciting debate, a very exciting discussion. And I was thinking to myself, amidst that debate, so how does the notion of freedom of speech, for example, how does freedom of speech improve lives? How does freedom of speech, for example, help a young mother whom I met at MPS with her problems? Her husband was absent because he's addicted to drugs, and she's struggling to keep the families together. Her kids were suffering because she could not handle the situation on her own. How does freedom of speech, for example, help that old uncle living alone in his flat, help him to go out of the flat, be actively social, and lead a decent, active life out there, enjoy the rest of his years. Now, please do not get me wrong. I am not against freedom of speech. In fact, I do think that freedom of speech is important in a democracy. I'm not talking about the unbridled kind, and I believe that most of us would agree that freedom of speech must come with some responsibilities as well. But to me, at that point was that I think words mean nothing if it cannot be translated into something that is tangible and has real positive impact on the ground. My experiences at MPS, in the grassroots, gave me this realization that there must be action accompanying words. Then it's real change, then it's real impact. And so that is why when I became an MP, when I had the chance to become an MP, I decided to devote much of my time and energy on the ground to help solve real issues and implement programs that hopefully will help improve the lives of my residents. I'm not saying that words are useless. No, of course not. We need to engage in constructive debate, whether it's in parliament or outside. But I think it has to go hand in hand with actions. So perhaps let me give an example. An example that I will share is on mental health. When I stood for election, there were a few causes that I felt very passionate about: youth, elderly, health care, specifically mental health. So I'll share a bit more about my journey in this area and how and why I think that action is very important. So I have always been interested and passionate about mental health issues since I was a student. That was precisely why I chose psychology in NUS, despite taking all the super hardcore sciences before that. I felt that mental health is a grossly neglected area in public health care, and that it is an area that there's a lot of wasted potential. There's a lot of stigma, and that if you look at it, actually a lot of us are going through difficulties in our lives, but because of stigma, perhaps because of the lack of understanding, a lot of times we just let it go undetected. Depression, for example, the lifetime prevalence is about 1 in 16 people. So if you assume that we have 200 people in this auditorium, about 13 people may have depression at some point in life. And that's quite a lot, at least in my opinion, and that's not including other forms of mental conditions. I think that for mental health, if we are able to do something about it, to address the stigma issues and improve the situation, we can actually help these people who may be suffering from these conditions make better use of their life and not let their potential go wasted. They can lead a normal and decent life. They don't have to, and they shouldn't be discriminated when they apply for jobs. They should not feel shameful when they seek professional help, for example. So anyway, cutting the long story short, after coming into Parliament, I thought that this was a wonderful opportunity for me to do more about it. And so in Parliament, every year, I speak on mental health. Even this year, I spoke on it as well. And I will not repeat all the points because it's all in the Hansard. But in Parliament, I've spoken on a broad range of issues concerning mental health. I've talked about how we should combat stigma so that people who may be suffering from mental health can have the courage to come forward and seek professional help, and so that they too can have a normal life. I've talked about how we need a more community-based approach so that they can be better integrated into the community, and that again helps to ensure better care and follow-up, and that they will not be further sidelined. I've also talked about better recognition for mental health professionals, for example, so a broad range. By the end of the day, I still feel that stigma is the core issue, is the core barrier to all of these things. And I remember at one point, we even mooted the idea of compulsory treatment. If we see someone who clearly is suffering from some form of mental health condition, but refuse to go seek treatment, we should, make sure that this person go and seek the professional help. So, but that could not take place because of complex considerations such as human rights. So after so many years of talking about it in Parliament and having this debate to and fro, and even following up with MOH outside of Parliament, I realized one thing, and that is that we can spend a lot of time debating about this, how we should do this, maybe we should have this policy, maybe we should have that policy in Parliament, but the truth is, the reality is that this is a complex issue, and it's going to take time before a real solution can come about. There is progress, there is improvement, but it's not going to just magically solve itself overnight. And that every day on the ground, there are still people who are going through the signs and symptoms that come with mental health issues, and sometimes even get into trouble because of that, affecting people around them as well. And so these are real problems that we face. And so about 2 to 3 years ago, I decided that debates in Parliament alone will not solve the issue. I'm not saying that I will stop debating about it. I will, in fact, continue to debate about it, lobby for more resources, whether it's in Parliament or outside of Parliament with MOH. But I decided that real action needs to be taken. And so, thankfully for me, I managed to get the Agency for Integrated Care, the Southeast CDC, and my grassroots team to come together to implement a pilot initiative within the community. What that involves, it included having workshops whereby we get all the different community stakeholders to come together and talk about some of the issues that they face relating to mental health and some of the pain points that we face within the community throughout our community work. And then from there, we identify a roadmap, even SOPs in terms of how we can intervene or try to help someone. Of course, there were training sessions as well, whereby we send our community partners, our volunteers, and even residents to go through so that they have a better appreciation and understanding of mental health, so that it better equips them in terms of identifying residents who may have been vulnerable or already suffering from it, and help them to get help. So this is still very much a work in progress. I have seen some positive results. There's greater awareness, there's greater acceptance, and I think this is an important first step. So I think just to wrap up on this, there are 2 points that I want to make, which is words versus, so basically from what I've shared, there are 2 points. One is words versus action, and the second point really is that policy formulation or lobbying for causes cannot be devolved from ground understanding and action. And back to the topic that I had set out at the beginning, is that I don't think there is a single definition of what an MP should do or how an MP should be. And I don't think that we should allow our understanding of how other countries' MPs function anchor and dictate how our local MPs should function. If anything, based on my own personal journey and experiences, I think that apart from speaking up, apart from making beautiful speeches with quote-worthy quotes, action remains imperative. And so that's all that I want to share within this 10 minutes. And now I think it is time to invite Viswa up on stage to join me. And I'm sure he will pose me many sharp and challenging questions, as you would. So, Viswa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when are you due?
Early August.
Huh?
Early August.
Early August.
Yeah.
Are you hoping for sympathy?
No, I think I am hoping, but I don't think I will get sympathy.
We're not that bad. I'd just like to pick on one line that sort of bothered me a bit. You said words versus action. Why versus?
Well,
Aren't words action too? I mean, when you stand up to speak about something, isn't that also action?
it is, but I think words alone, if it's just speeches made in a contained environment, without translating it into real action on the ground, then it's just words there.
I mean, those are actions, right? I mean, those are specific actions. But if you want long-term change, sometimes you need to move towards advocacy. And advocacy requires a few people to stand up and speak up on things that you believe in.
Yeah, which is why I said
Yeah.
I'm not against it.
But why did you then say words versus action?
Words and action.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
want to correct it now.
I will correct it now. So
Yeah.
words and action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
See,
which
so I scored 1 point.
yes, you win. But I think in the main content of my speech, I did also reiterate that I do agree that you need to debate, you need to speak up, but at the end of the day, it cannot be just words alone. It has to come together with action.
I
that
agree.
has
I
real
understand.
impact.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But I have a peeve with our government sometimes because the government constantly says you need to walk the talk. You need to walk the talk. But sometimes you need to talk the talk. You know. No, you know what I'm saying. Sometimes you need to stand up and say how you feel, and that's already the beginning of change. Not all change needs to be actionable. Sometimes change is about standing up and changing the way people think. For example, mental health. Classic example. What you did was very laudable, is very laudable. I mean, you brought together different stakeholders and you conducted workshops, trainings, and so on. That's good. But beyond the people you managed to engage to change, how much of change do you think you managed? Do you think you managed to change mindsets? For that, you need people who can stand up and be evangelists, right? Who can, not necessarily in the religious sense of the word, but who stand up and change people's views based on belief. That's action, isn't it?
Well,
Would you say that?
Well, if you define it that way, that the whole act of articulating the words is an action,
It is action.
Then yes.
So why does the government take such a narrow definition of walking the talk?
Well, I think the idea here is not to narrowly define that, but it's more of an attempt to encourage everyone to go a little bit further, to go a little bit beyond, apart from speaking up, debating in the hope of changing attitudes, which of course will drive behaviors.
Isn't that important long term?
No, I'm not denying it. I've never denied it, the importance of that. But I think the point is that it's really trying to encourage people to go a little bit further and translate it into real ground programs or initiatives that can make that change in attitude, change in behaviors happen.
Okay, let me play the devil's advocate.
Sure.
Not that I haven't been doing that, but let me play the devil's advocate. So, one argument could be that the reason why the government keeps talking about, or people in political leadership keep talking about walk the talk, is because they want a whole lot of people to go out there and be the hands and feet, hands and legs, and do all this kind of stuff and feel that you're volunteering, but actually you don't want fundamental change, because that comes about when people stand up and speak from the pulpit.
Why
And
would
they don't want that.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
not that this is something I necessarily agree with.
Okay, you're
But
playing the devil's advocate.
if I was to play the devil's advocate and put this to you, that the government is actually afraid of people who speak from the pulpit and get people to change attitudes. Would you agree with that?
I don't think the government is afraid of people speaking up.
Then?
And in fact, I think the government has been encouraging young people to speak up through various platforms.
But Amos Yee also spoke up.
But I think, okay, Amos Yee is a very colorful example. It's a recent example. I think that is, okay, on Amos Yee, I have my own opinions on this.
Remember, you're going to be a mother.
I know. Yeah, so I do feel for the parents as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe on Amos E first. So I do not condone some of the things that he may have said or done, but I think some of the measures that were taken against him, for example, taking him to court, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
I don't agree with
Why?
that. Firstly, apart from that, he's still young. I do think that it's not meeting the objective. I think at the end of the day, one would really hope that he as a young person would see why this has created so much furor amongst the public, and perhaps to even see how that it has been quite insensitive to the people, whether it's the religion or people who felt perhaps offended by the picture that he uploaded, for example. And that if we look at the sequence of events, I think some of his actions actually seem to be feeding on from the attention that he has been receiving. And also, as you mentioned, I'm going to be a mother soon. I feel for the parents, and I don't think any parents would have felt great seeing how their own kid being verbally criticized, or being so heavily criticized, whether it's online or offline. I think it must have pained their hearts a lot. And looking at how they have been portrayed in the media, I think they have tried their best to raise him and to help him, and it's just unfortunate, like the whole incident. So I think at the end of the day, for Amos E, I don't condone his actions, but I think taking him to court, giving him all this, issuing these hard penalties on him, is really not the right way to go. I think he needs a lot more help, and he needs help in a more private setting, and help him out of it. So I think that would have been more effective and useful as well.
So will you bring this up in Parliament?
I think some of my colleagues have actually raised.
So my question is, will you?
I will raise this as a discussion.
Because it sounded like it mattered to you.
It does, but because now it's also in the court, I think the verdict is not out yet. I don't think it would be helpful to use this as a specific issue.
Maybe after you become a mother.
Maybe after I become a mother, and after the court has a verdict to that, because I think it's not appropriate to really go into that much now.
But I'm glad you said what you did, because it is important for us to hear what our political leaders share, what you feel about things, right? Because the general sense we get about government is that you are a collective that thinks collectively, that you are not allowed to have individual viewpoints. That's the general sense. It's unfortunate, but that's true. That's the general sense we have. So let me ask you this question, slightly mischievous, but let me ask you this.
What's new?
Apart from your infamy of 2011, why should we have you here as a guest speaker today?
Simple answer is because I was invited.
Yes. But that aside, why do you think we need to be here on, an evening where we could be doing many other things? Why do you think so many people are here? What is it that we're going to be gaining from listening to you, apart from the fact that you were a sensation in 2011? What do you think?
Well, well, first of all, I should thank everyone for making time to come here. Thank you so much. I think, as the theme had suggested, it's about failing forward. Quite obviously, in 2011, I had quite a journey. I was the lightning rod, as some would describe, in a lot of things. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, even if there's nothing wrong, I will still attract attention and criticisms as well. And I went through what some people call the baptism of fire. fairly or unfairly, these were the opinions that people had of me, regardless of how I feel about it. But I think what has happened, if I can be a bit shameless about this, is that what has happened is that over the past few years, I think I have been working very hard on the ground, and I've been, working with my team to try to institute programs and help people with their real life issues, with their real life problems in the constituency. And over time, there's a trust that's being built up. And today, I would say that although I definitely wouldn't have won everyone over, but I think that I'm in a much better situation than it was compared to 2011. And I think what would be perhaps useful is that despite the very tough time that I went through in 2011, it was extremely unpleasant, that I can still be here and speak and share my experiences with everyone, I think shows something. I hope, it is my own hope, that if I could survive that, emerge stronger and even more determined to do what I think is right and to continue my cause, I hope that, people out there, especially young people out there, would feel encouraged to, pursue their own passion and their own causes as well. I think in life, there will always be problems. There will always be adversities that we face. We can't please everyone. There will be people who criticize us, and sometimes we feel hurt or disappointed, whatever it is. But that we should not let that bring us down. And so, as a bit thick-skinned as this may sound, is that I hope that with my own experience, and that if I am able to continue to stand here, facing everyone, I am able to send that very positive message to young people out there, especially my juniors. If I can achieve that, I think what I went through, at least what I went through, would have been worth it. So I hope that it would be worthwhile in that sense as well. And that finally, of course, I hope that young people would actively step forward to serve, whether as a volunteer in the community, or whether it's to come into politics and play a more proactive role in shaping the policies of our country and taking the country forward.
Give her a hand. There's nothing like a good chocho, no?
Huh?
Nothing like a good chocho.
Good chocho, yeah, just show me.
No, but you see, why didn't you say all this in your opening speech? You see, this is the problem. You've become too PAP-fied.
You see, that's what I say. Some people are
the
very
PAP people all talk really boring stuff,
Yeah, that's why I need you to be here with me, you see.
Now she's really talking from the heart. I mean, this is how speeches should be. If you said this at the start, I wouldn't have had the heart to come and chocho you. No, but you see, at the end of the day, isn't this what it is? It's about sharing. You just shared from your heart what you went through. It wasn't about pontification, it wasn't big things, or as LKY described my maiden speech as highfalutin. It's not highfalutin, but the point here is it's from the heart, right? And really at the end of the day, this is the reason why you're here. Because you've got a story to share. And there are obviously people who want to hear that story, And I think more of us need to hear these stories. And I have just one more question before I throw it open to the floor. My question is this. You obviously believe in social work, yes?
Yes.
I mean, it sounded like from the time you were an embryo, you believed in social work.
Not
Just
so
kidding.
sure.
But you really, I mean, from a young age, it was somewhere inside you. You want to do it. Then be a social worker. Why do you have to become an MP? I mean, it begs the question, right? If you're interested in social work, then do social work. Why do you then have to be an MP to do social work?
Very fair question.
Yeah.
And you're not the first one who have asked
So
me.
why?
Why? I think that, okay, actually, firstly, I think I've highlighted it in my 10-minute spiel earlier, is that I believe that action is important. And I guess that's why, once I devote myself into it, it becomes like social work. But there's a lot of things that we have to do on the ground on a day-to-day basis. Apart from the parliament sitting, which is about once a month, most of our time is really on the ground. And the key thing that I believe in is that no matter how we debate in parliament, no matter how we get ourselves involved in policy formulation, we cannot do so in vacuum. We cannot just do so based on philosophy. Philosophy is important. We need to have a certain framework to work with. But it cannot devolve from real ground understanding of what issues people face, the real challenges that they have to go through. And therefore, a lot of time is spent on the ground interacting with people, engaging them, understanding these. Along the way, as I speak with them, as they open up and share with me the issues that they face, I also recognize that there are opportunities for me to master the resources and work with the team that I have and do something to help them. So policies can only reach out to that much. At the end, that last 1 mile, that last 1 kilometer, however you say it, you still need people on the ground to actually effect it or to help them. So for example, you can have policies, benefiting the elderly in terms of healthcare or elder care. But if the elderly is trapped in the house because he's living alone, nobody to help him out of the house, even if you give him free healthcare, he is not able to enjoy that service. And so in the end, you need someone on the ground to help them bring him out and seek the medical treatment. So I think to me, that is also very important. And that being an MP, like it or not, I do believe that MPs have certain influence, and that it's easier for MPs in that sense to actually ask people for resources, for donations. And also as MPs, we can knock on agencies' doors or even bang their tables if need be and ask them for more resources as well, or engage them in issues that we find have been long-standing and have not been solved. So a lot of these are a lot of groundwork as well. And I think that in the end makes us become at least a part-time social worker in that sense. Because a lot of things that we do cannot be devolved from the ground, the people whom we represent. And especially in my case, in McPherson, I have a lot of elderly. And I have low-income families as well. I have at least 20 over blocks, rental blocks. And the issues that they face cannot be simply solved by policies alone. A lot of time, a lot of personal attention has to be devoted to them, to hear them out, advise them, or even to walk them through step by step. And so I think for me, that is why I spend a lot of time doing that. And I believe the same is also, it is also the same for many of my colleagues. And I think in Singapore, being an MP, apart from debating in Parliament and making beautiful speeches and trying to effect policy change, on the ground, it's still very important. Yeah,
So, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is, it is important for MPs to be social workers.
I think it is important for MPs to have a social mission and the willingness to actually get their hands dirty and go do it. Lead by example in that sense, and spend enough time to know what's going on, and even create programs if need be to complement the policies that may be formulated in Parliament. So I think if that's what makes us social worker, then yeah, why not?
Okay, good. And you approve? Okay,
Thanks.
all right. Okay. All right, great. That's a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions, comments? Yes, please, yes. But no speeches. Okay, all right. Yeah, go to the mic, please. The reason why we need you to go to the microphone is this is being carried live online. Could you give us your
Tan Suan Im,
your IC
Faculty
number?
of Arts, 1962.
And in your case, can I have your mobile number as well?
I'll text you. Pei Ling, 4 years ago, you went through a baptism of fire. But you faced it with a fortitude and a strength which is remarkable for somebody so young, comparatively. Tell us, where did you get that strength to go through that baptism and emerged from it, I would say, triumphant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the question is, where did you get the strength to get through this baptism of fire and emerge even stronger?
Yeah. I can give you the
Thank you.
PAP answers, like you say, the model
Do you want to hear the
answers.
PAP answer? No. Can we hear the opposition answer, please?
Is there an opposition answer to this? Okay,
Okay.
I think for me, there is also a sense of pride. I feel that I cannot just quit. I mean, it was a terrible experience, to be honest.
Did you cry?
Well,
Quietly.
I had very intense emotions, and yes, sometimes I do actually. But it was a terrible experience. I've never felt so down in my life. But there's this fighting part, this fighting spirit in me, and this pride in me that I just can't quit like that.
How come?
Because then I would have given up any chance of proving, that I can make a difference, and I would have given up on the only chance, this very rare opportunity, to do something that is big and meaningful. I can't just let it go like that. And
No, but you won the election.
yeah, I
So
did.
you didn't have to let it go. You won the election. And some people say you won the
Yeah.
election
Well, I could
because
have-
of you
Yeah.
came in on the coattails of Goh Chok Tong.
Well, I could have just thrown in the towel halfway through,
How
right?
could you?
But that's why I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. And there's a sense of responsibility as well to my team members, my grassroots leaders and to my activists who have stood behind me, and my family members, of course. But I think to me is that I cannot give up. If I give up, I'll be sending the message that I'm a quitter. And what kind of message am I sending to the rest of the young people? That, that age is really a barrier to going into politics or taking up greater responsibility, that, I'm a softie, or that I'm not passionate enough about my causes, which means I'm fake. But it's not true. I decided to put myself forward because I believe that, having this opportunity, I can do more, whether it's for youth, elderly, or mental health, as I mentioned earlier. I believe I could do more. And if I give up, I will never be able to do that. And I cannot prove to people that that young people too can take on greater responsibility and play a very important role in government or country leadership, for example. So there was this sense of pride in me that just kept me going. I mean,
I guess
this
the
is
question is
the non-PAP answer.
But where did you get this, I mean, this fire in the belly, so to speak? Where do you get it?
Well, apart from the fact that I do want to do what I want to do, the causes that I feel for, I think perhaps it's also my
Came from
own...
a Paikya family.
Actually, a bit like that lah. Because I think my family is the kind who will never yield. And I look at my father, my mother during
Are
the...
you Teochew?
No, I'm actually Hokkien. My mom is a Cantonese, but I'm Hokkien because my dad is. I look at my parents and even my grandparents. They never give up. And even when things were very tough, for example, you know, we were financially struggling, my mom was actually feeling quite very, very down. Won't go into that, but she was feeling very down. And so was my dad. Health-wise, they were also affected. But they just continued to work. And no matter what, they would not give up. Because if they give up, who's going to support the family? And I suppose that sort of rubbed off me as well, coupled with maybe a bit of my own personality as well. So I just cannot give up. I refuse to give up. And I will continue to fight. I will continue to do what I think is right for as long as I can and for as long as I have the opportunity to do so. So I think for me, although it was a terrible experience, it was very tough for me, I just can't bring myself to quit. I just felt that I have to go through with this because of the need to do what is right and improve myself, but also that there's this sense of responsibility, and that since people have voted me in, I cannot fail them as well. And so whatever happens at the end of the 5 years, assuming it's a 5-year term, that's a separate thing altogether. But at least in that 5 years, I must be able to do my best and you know, live up to my conscience, and that even if I no longer run after the 5 years for whatever reasons, even if, I want to make sure that, you know, people walk away thinking that Pei Ling has done the best that she can, and that she was not irresponsible. So I think there is that as well.
You shared with me earlier that you took you took a semester off to help out in a family situation.
Yeah.
You want to share that?
Okay. So what happened was that when I was in year 3 NUS, my father suddenly, the family was going through a lot of things. There were a few issues happening, and then my father had a heart attack one day, just suddenly. And he was the sole breadwinner. We were running a coffee shop, I think some of you may know. It's a small family-run coffee shop since my grandfather's day. And it's a family-run thing. And when he's down, he had to go for surgery. I don't have siblings, so I'm the only child. And my mom, she's not in good health either. And she's always been a housewife. So no choice, we had to take turns to run the coffee shop. So I take the morning to the afternoon shift as well as the night shift to close off the shop. So it was very tiring. I couldn't concentrate in school. I couldn't concentrate in classes. I couldn't do the term papers at all. I remember once for cognition, for the module of cognition, I asked for extension of deadline, and by the time the professor, he's really fast, he finished vetting all the papers and returned to the class, I still haven't even started yet. I just don't have the energy to go and even do it. And so I eventually made the decision that, you know, as opposed to spreading myself thin and doing nobody any justice, I should just take the semester off and focus on running the coffee shop to help my mother, my father, so that he can, you know, stop worrying about it. And then once it's better, I'll finish off my course lah. So that's why I took a semester off. And by the way, I have full admiration. I don't know whether anyone is working and studying at the same time. My God, I have full admiration for those who are having gone through that. It's really very tough. I don't know how people can go through it, but it's really very tough.
Especially running a coffee shop. No, I can imagine. But you know, thanks for sharing that. You know, it gives us a better insight to you as a person. Yes, sorry to have held you, kept you waiting. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's on.
Hello.
Yeah.
Ms. Ting, I'd like to ask
You can call me
Your
Pei
name,
Ling
your,
lah.
your name,
We
please.
are all-
Ko Chin Hua, FASS 1983.
FASS is Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Hi, Chinua.
On mental health, if I may put it this way, I think there are two patients. One, the patient and society who has a mental problem with mental health patients. So what has or what can be done about changing society's mental problem about mental illness?
You mean their attitude towards...
Yes.
okay.
If I put it in that way.
You're
Okay.
talking about the stigmatization?
Yes, the stigmatization.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You want to sit down first? Because you stood for a very long
Maybe
time.
he wants to engage you?
Oh, yeah, no problem, no
Okay.
problem, yeah. Just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think stigma, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge problem. And I think it is the underlying problem to all the challenges that we face. Stigma can be further worsened by how we portray in the media. Sometimes, we because it's sensational sometimes, sometimes you watch drama and it can be very scary. But not all mental health issues or mental health conditions are like that. And so the awareness and understanding of what mental illnesses, for example, what mental illness encompass is very critical. So I think the public education is important. But I think in Parliament in Parliament this year, in my speech, I had a slightly different spin to it. Sometimes stigma cannot be easily eradicated because we haven't been able to solve some of the real problems that actually affects the people around them. So maybe I give an example. So neighbor disputes. Sometimes in such disputes, it involves one person perhaps having psychosis, that means hallucinating or having delusions, and may have been smelling something, but it's actually not there. And so this person keep calling up the agencies, and the agencies then have to go to the neighbor and say that, can you please stop doing these things that cause this smell. And in this case, in this particular example that I gave, this person A, alleged that the neighbor has been making drugs at home and she could smell all the chemicals, despite nobody else smelling it, despite a one whole year where there's this wild goose chase, all the agencies, whoever we can engage, have been engaged. And this poor neighbor felt very harassed at the end of the day because of that. And so there's now animosity between them. And so that is not very helpful. Another case, which was actually high-rise littering.
Actually, you should stop at that case.
Oh.
Because there are plenty of very interesting questions
Oh,
that are
really?
coming online.
Oh, okay.
Which you have to answer.
But let me just wrap up that one. So anyway, I've got a few examples. It's all in my speech in Parliament this year. But sometimes it's really because some of these issues, when we cannot adequately solve it, and that people, no matter how they try to understand, regardless of them understanding that it's a mental condition, sometimes it's beyond their own personal control. But because it's bugging them every day, they can't bring themselves to open up and accept them. And that further prevents the person from wanting to admit that he or she has an issue with it, and therefore go seek the treatment that he or she needs.
So the question here is, what can you as an MP do to change this attitude?
Oh.
The stigmatization issue.
Yeah. So I think for one, in such instances, for example, we have to address the symptomatic issue first, so that there is some space, some relief, if I can put it that way, and put a tentative truce to it. And then it's really trying to work through the family members to persuade the person to even get an assessment and then get help. It's not easy, this part here. This is sometimes the most difficult part, because if the person has no insights or refuse to seek treatment, it's almost impossible. And I think attitude change is always very long drawn, and we just have to keep explaining to them that it's actually nothing shameful, it's no big deal. We can always arrange for a more sensitive setting so that it's only you and the doctor. But anyway, this part is always the most challenging part, and it takes time. So this is the main challenge that I'm facing now. And why this is so is because as long as the person is not inflicting physical harm to himself, herself, or people around, and if this person has no prior record with, let's say, IMH, for example, you cannot forcefully bring this person in for treatment. Yeah, so there is this challenge there.
And it is a challenge.
It is.
And it is about balancing that with the rights of the individual.
Yes, indeed.
Sometimes it can be abused, right?
Which is why, even though the compulsory treatment was being mooted before, it could not go ahead because of that consideration as well. Yeah.
Okay. Can pass?
Later we can talk more.
Okay. All right. Now, first question. This one, very high voting. Huh?
Oh.
Can we have the question?
Wow, very cheeky, this one.
Hey, NUS people are capable of being cheeky, no?
Yeah, we are top university in Asia.
It's not very
right?
obvious, but it comes out once in a while. So,
Yeah.
So, you know her, right?
Of course I know her.
So,
yeah.
what do you admire most about her?
I think she is a very spirited lady, and I do admire her in terms of how she conducts herself, how she held herself.
She's 4 years younger than you, 3 years.
I think about that. She's younger than me, I know. So I think she's very articulate. She's very savvy with the media and how she portrays herself. I think that's useful. But I think she's a spirited lady. I think throughout the whole Hastings during the GE, she held herself very well. And I think that's something that's admirable. And perhaps even many of us should take a leaf from, in terms of how we present ourselves.
Okay,
so,
now tell us the truth.
I'm telling you the truth, but the question is what
throw
do I
smoke?
admire?
No, wow, Major. You can't stand her, right?
I wished her well when she was unwell. When I think during the.
Are you in touch with her? I mean, do you all keep in touch?
No.
When you meet in public, do you sort of turn
away?
away?
We do say hi to each other. I remember at the nomination center, and there was once on the road, along Circuit Road, we happened to walk past each other. She was with Jeanette, and I forgot who I was with. I think one of my grassroots leader or something. Yeah. So and we just walked past each other. We said hi to each other. I mean, I don't think we are enemies, lah. I mean, it's just that we are from different political parties. We have different perspectives, and GE is at the end of the day, a form of competition, and there would be some of these hustings. It's inevitable. And as I was mentioning, I think during that period in time, there was one she was down with, I think, stomach flu. And the reporter asked me what I would like to say to her. I said, I wish her a speedy recovery. So, and I mean it, and I meant it.
You sure?
Sure.
That means you're not a very good politician.
Huh? I don't believe in damning someone. I don't believe.
You want to whack them while they're still standing up.
Well, I think Margaret Thatcher had a quote, and I'm paraphrasing it. Basically, if someone goes into a personal attack, that means the person has run out of any political argument, to counter. So I think if we go into personal attacks, then, this.
You've got to be very careful because you could be talking about, you could be implicating some of your colleagues.
No, I'm just kidding.
This is the other. Yeah. I'll let you go there. Okay? This is the other one. From the perspective of a relatively young PAP member, relatively young, what do you think is the biggest hurdle for the party today? As the future Secretary General of the party, I mean, what do you think?
I don't pick my. I will not touch on that. Whatever you say, I didn't say.
So what do you think is the biggest hurdle? Assuming that the next general election is this September on the 14th or something, you know?
That one I don't know.
Yeah.
Your guess is as
Yeah.
good as mine. But I think what I personally think is how the party is able to keep itself relevant to the younger generation. I know we hear this over and over again, and but really is how do we appeal to the younger generation? Because we are the ruling party, we have been here for more than 50 years. I mean, we are celebrating actually 50 here. As an incumbent, surely when you're in government for so many years, there are things that people may not necessarily agree with. There are things that used to work in the past, but we have not been catching up fast enough, for example, to change and adapt to it. So I think with each succeeding generation, there are certain viewpoints on how the approach should be. So, for example, this whole notion of freedom of speech, for example, I think some young people feel very strongly about it and felt that some of the policies are a bit strong-handed.
You're relatively young. What do you think?
I think freedom of speech, is it?
Mm-hmm.
I think freedom of speech cannot be exempted from moral and ethical standards. That's the main thing. Otherwise, to be able to express your own opinions on matters that are important, or any matter, for example, I think should be allowed there.
What is the meaning of moral and ethical standards?
So, for example, there must be enough respect, right? You don't just go out and just defame someone or make up lies or fabricate things just to get the person down. You don't just say something with the intention to really hurt the person or harm the person. So on and so. I mean, these are examples, lah. So I think it must be responsible. So and for example, if you want to put forth a viewpoint, perhaps it will also be useful that you don't just go on a one-sided approach. Maybe you want to hear from the other side and make a good argument as well. So, for example, in maybe like media reporting, if there's a dispute, apart from reporting just from one side, you also want to present the other side as well, so that people can make informed decisions.
So what you're saying is that you don't just read the Straits Times, you also listen to Channel News Asia to get a 360 perspective.
We try to.
You really think you get a 360 perspective?
No, I mean
reading the Straits Times and listening to Channel News Asia?
It's different, okay.
Well, what do you think? What do you think? Tell me.
Excuse me. I think.
You're not answering my question. What do you think? I mean, this is the general view that people have.
Yeah.
That the mainstream media could be. Is there any mainstream media people here? No. The mainstream media, the perception that some people have is the mainstream media seems to be apologetic for the government.
Okay.
Okay, that's not exactly 360, right? Which means that if you want 360, you probably want to go to online. But if you just go to online, that's different, right?
Yeah.
So the question I'm asking is, who determines what's moral? Who determines what's ethical? Who determines the markers?
Well, there are two parts here.
Only two.
Yeah, broadly from my perspective, two parts. I think for a balanced viewpoint, I think whether it's reading opinions online or reading the reports in the so-called mainstream media, I think having both perspectives is important. And to be honest, most of us are doing it these days. Singapore is so open, young people have access to internet, it's just inevitable. So I think having two sides of the story in that sense, although that was not what I meant earlier, but having these two sides, two sources in that sense, I think it's important to help. I think opinions, we need to know how people think. Factually, from the mainstream media, we also need to know what are the facts before we know what's happening and make a decision. So that's one part of it. The second part, which is, sorry, it just slipped my mind all of a sudden.
No. Never mind. Let's put that
who determines the moral and
who
ethical
determines
standards?
moral and ethical?
Yeah, so I think even moral and ethical standards, I think what you're suggesting is that it's a man-made construct. And it's something that's determined by the society. I think different societies probably have different standards, and this is something that we as a society will then have to discuss and determine. But I think some of the things, but in principle, generally in principle, is that no matter what we do or no matter what we say, it cannot be totally unbridled. There must be certain limitations in that sense, if I can put it that way. And in this case, if you would not want to be hurt by someone, you wouldn't want to do the same to others as well. So there is that. And you want to respect people as you want to respect people as you want people to respect you as well. So I think that, for example, is something that we have to consider when we talk about freedom of speech. And so this is...
So if I could go back to your point. You brought this up in response to the question question, what's the biggest hurdle? And you said, you brought this up. So you are suggesting that the biggest hurdle that the PAP would face is about connecting with the young.
I think that is the hurdle.
And then you cited freedom of speech as an example.
As an example, it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
It's not the only thing.
So in what ways do you think the PAP is facing this challenge with respect to this whole issue of freedom of speech?
I think some of the recent incidents, high-profile incidents, probably would have caused some discomfort, some tension between the generally speaking younger folks. I mean, of course, it's not just young people. It's generally, and the establishment, and which is linked to PAP. Yeah. So I think these are. I mean, this is these kind of recent examples. Just, if I could put it that way, drive a wedge in that relationship.
So what do you think the party could do?
I think the party, and I know you can't speak for the party, but this is your personal opinion. My personal opinion.
Yeah, I'm helping to indemnify you. Okay.
I think we cannot run away from engaging people more.
But
the thing is that
the party is doing so much of engagement all over the place.
It is.
But what do you think is missing? In your opinion?
The thing is that the reach is still not there yet. We have, I can see my colleagues, for example, holding dialogues and, going for some, small group sessions and try to speak with young people to understand the perspective and have an open discussion. I don't think we are able to reach out. Even despite that, we are not able to reach out to everyone. And online, as a vehicle in terms of reach, is so much bigger than all these physical platforms. And somehow you can't force people to come and attend. Why I think it's important to engage is this. It's not just about convincing the young people my own viewpoint. I mean, young people have your own minds. You will make your own decision. But the thing is that if you are able to understand where I come from, and that I'm not making this policy decision, or that I'm not doing this because of selfish reasons, and that there are real considerations involved, the trade-offs that are involved, for example, then at least there is this trust that this may not be the thing that I fully agree with you, but I know that you are not in to screw me up or to fix anyone, that it is really driven by real issues or real things happening elsewhere, for example. So I think that trust is very important, and you can only do that when you have a heart-to-heart discussion. Sometimes with a big group it's really difficult to do that. You can only do it with smaller groups so that you can have that to and fro, that debate or that discussion there. And
so basically what you're saying is instead of just explaining the policy, describing the policy, they need to know where you're coming from.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
What you're thinking is, why you're thinking along those lines, and sometimes even some of the challenges that you're facing.
Yes, indeed.
Good. I shall spare you for a minute. Any final question, comment? Anyone? Come on, La. Okay, if not, I'm going to pick someone. Okay? I'm going to pick my friend Dinesh. Come on, ask a question. just recently returned from Finland. Please use the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Tin. My name is Dinesh. Well, a question that I had put up on the survey was, or not survey, the questionnaire was, do you think you could become an advocate against cyberbullying? You know, like Monica Lewinsky today, you know, given the fact that you had experienced it yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Dinesh.
Good question. You've experienced cyberbullying to some extent, right? But yeah, it's a great question. What's your stand on cyberbullying?
I think any form of bullying is just unacceptable. So I think cyberbullying, of course, is no exception. I would be happy to advocate against cyberbullying. And like I mentioned earlier, if my own personal experience can be of any help, I'll be very happy to share with more people. If that would give them, you know, the encouragement to not be beaten by what other people say of them. So I mean,
do you think you were bullied in 2011? I mean, there were criticisms leveled against you, but do you think you were bullied?
I think it was overwhelming. I think some were unfair to me, but I wouldn't say, okay, personally, I won't see myself as a victim. I just don't see myself as being bullied. But I suppose some people may see that as a form of cyberbullying, and perhaps it is. But I think there are some things that people, okay, maybe I should put it this way. The difference is how the person receiving all these criticisms respond to it. So if you stand up for yourself and that you make a decision that you shall not be affected by it, then I think that's fine. But if you actually get affected by it and it has disrupted your day-to-day activities or even your self-confidence, then it's a problem. And this has to be resolved. So this is how I would differentiate it. So for me, I think, although it was extremely unpleasant for a while, it was quite troubling. But eventually, I made a decision that I cannot be beaten by this, and that as long as my conscience is clear, I'll just do what I need to do, and I'll just do that. So I think that's
besides, hey, you're in politics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And
that's expected.
It's par for the course.
Yeah.
It's part of the deal, right?
Yep, it is.
Okay. We're running out of time. I'll ask you one final question.
Okay.
There's some talk that there's going to be some boundary shifts again for this election that's going to be on September 14th. Some people are saying, there's some talk that McPherson could become a single-member constituency. Who do you think is going to be fielded in McPherson?
By who?
By the PAP.
Well, I think so far there's no indication that there will be anyone else. So
you think you'll be...
I think I would be...
If it becomes a single-member constituency, you are most likely going to be the candidate, right?
Yes. Because I don't think I've seen any person being parachuted in so far. I'm still doing what I'm doing. I'm still, fully working with my team. There's no indication.
So, my question is, if you're fielded by the PAP,
yes,
single-member constituency, which means it's you versus somebody else, right? And if it's contested, would you prefer that, or if it remains the GRC?
Of course, I would prefer SMC.
Why?
I think, firstly, there are two levels to this.
You don't bluff, I must tell the truth.
I don't bluff lah. How to bluff you? This one, how to bluff you, right? So I think for one is that I do think we should have more SMCs. There needs to be more competition, not just philosophical wise, but also to convince the electorate that we are worthy of that seat. Secondly, of course, it's that I've never wanted to, be riding on someone else's coattail. I've always wanted to have that chance to fight on my own 2 feet.
Hope you.
Huh? I think maybe. Yeah, so I think personally, I would prefer to fight SMC. And then whatever the results, it's clear cut. I mean, if I lose, so be it. If I win, then, people know as well. Yeah, so that's that.
Good answer. What do you think? Well, I just want to wrap by saying this. I don't know how many of us here would be able to survive the way she did at 27. Frankly, I don't think I would have. And I have absolute admiration for you, Tin Pei Ling. And I hope, and I hope you get due credit for having the courage to be who you are, for better or for worse. I think you're an authentic person, and there's a lot to be said for that. And I'm sure many of us here admire you. We may not completely agree with everything you do and everything you say, but we admire you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Viswa. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm very proud to say you are an alumnus of NUS.
Yes, I
We'd
am.
like to see more of such alumnus.
Yes, we
with
should.
fire in the belly and a big belly.
A very big one.
Thank you. Give her a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to say we'd like you to do well in the next election, but that would be partisan, so we shan't go there, right? And here's a little souvenir for you, a picture with a very handsome man.
Oh,
And that's not your husband.
no.
This is a picture, a token
Thank you.
from us to you.
Very personalized.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll give this to you later. And we've got something for you to do. Here, you can write some things really nice about me.
Okay.
You can take a seat.
I can write anything.
You can write anything
Okay.
except propaganda.
Like vote for PAP.
No, that's out.
Just kidding.
How many of you think it's going to be this year, the election? How many of you think it's going to be next month? How many of you think it's going to be in July? How many of you think it's going to be on the 9th of August? Unlikely. What do you think? September? How many of you think GE is going to be in September? Okay. I think it's going to be in September. What do you think?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, you want to read it to us?
Okay. Well, I said fail forward and never backward, which is in line with the theme, and that action and words must go together. And of course, I want to thank everyone, NUS and Viswa, for the wonderful session today. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll give it to you later. So, we'd all like to wish you all the best
Thank you.
for the baby.
Thank you. I need that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please join us for some light eats and drinks and to mingle with her. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. That
Thank
was
you, Lisa.
wonderful.
Thank
you. We'll give this to you later.
Sure.
You want to remove? Take